morning, everyone, and welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Pauline, and we have a lot to discuss today because there were a lot of games this last night in the NBA side as well as in the college hoops side, as well as my guy that I've been in love with these last few episodes, Russell Westbrook. So Russell just led his team to another win with his 18th recorded triple-double. And so he has officially tied for the second time Magic Johnson with most recorded triple-doubles in a season at 18. And there's still quite a few games left in the season. So it's not going to... He's definitely going to break this record as well as set a new record, no doubt. So that's very exciting for him. And it's actually it's come at a great time for the Thunder because and this goes back to my argument, and this is, if he continues to play in the way that he is, then I'm going to continue discussing this. But so he just played the Oklahoma City Thunder, just set off against the Memphis Grizzlies. And earlier in the season when they played against the Grizzlies, they lost by 34 points, and he actually got ejected from the game, and he had 0 assists and 6 turnovers. So it was probably one of, if not his worst game of the season. And so that was something difficult. But then they came back to play them at home against the Grizzlies. And again, he had his triple-double, 24 points, 13 rebounds, 12 assists. And I'm not going to lie, it wasn't probably the best performance. Yes, he did get that triple-double, okay. But like I said, it wasn't his best performance. He was 0 of 7 from the three-point line and was only 6 of 19. And so it wasn't pretty. It wasn't the best, but they did win 103-95, so we can't complain too much about that win. And he's the kind of guy, and I discussed this, we have a lot of other podcasts on the GSMC network. We also have a sports podcast that I co-host, and earlier today we discussed that, and I'll say it again here, Russell is a great athlete, and he's continually been a great player. When he had Kevin Durant as well as James Harden, they did well together. And then just most recently this last season, before losing out with Kevin Durant's move, he has slowly evolved as far as he doesn't necessarily need, and it's showing right now that he doesn't need anybody's help. But then when we have people argue that he is so selfish, but then he's averaging 10 assists a game, just this most recently 12 assists in this most recent victory. So it's not like he's not getting other players involved, and he's not being, and this argument that he is a selfish player, I think comes from Kevin Durant fans. So yeah, if you're always getting annoyed that he's not dishing it to Kevin Durant when he was playing alongside Durant, then yeah, he's a selfish player to you guys, but then the numbers don't lie. And so that's been my main thing with Russell. So I'm excited. They are going on a 6-game road trip. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does faring up against teams away from home. They are going to be seeing the Golden State Warriors, and I think that he's been bottling up all this anger, that they lost to them early in the season when we had that first meeting between Russell and Durant. But I think that's added fuel to the fire. I think that this is why we have seen him having 18 triple-doubles, because he is one of those guys that he is just going to eat everyone because he is looking for that matchup against Durant. So I'm very much looking forward to that in the next few days. So, but last night there were a lot of great games going on. We had the Knicks at the 76ers with a very, very close game, losing to the Sixers 97-98. Derrick Rose back with 25 points, 2 rebounds, and 4 assists. Embiid, he had 21 points, 14 rebounds, and 1 assist, doing very, very well there. Again, the Oklahoma Thunder held off the Grizzlies at home 95-103. Mike Conley had 22 points, 4 rebounds, and 6 assists. The Rockets face off against the Timberwolves. That was another great game, a high-scoring game, 105-119. James Harden with 33 points, 6 rebounds, and 12 assists right there. My guy, Karl Anthony Towns, had 23 points, 18 rebounds, and 5 assists. That was a lot of fun to watch if you guys had a chance to see that game. The Wizards met with the Celtics in Boston, 108-117. So Boston came out with the home win. Bradley Beal of the Wizards had 35 points, 2 rebounds, and 4 assists. And then our guy, Isaiah Thomas. Now, I'm an Isaiah Thomas fan ever since he was with the Kings. So I greatly enjoy Isaiah Thomas. He had 38 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists. His good friend Floyd Mayweather was in the house. He gave his jersey to him. And, you know, if you don't know about Isaiah Thomas and Floyd Mayweather, they're pretty good friends. And Isaiah did say that when Floyd is in the house, they always win. So that's kind of like their little good luck charm, I guess, over there. And Isaiah had 20 of his 38 points in the fourth quarter. And so that was a lot of fun. He did make 7 of 12 shots in that fourth quarter. So he wrapped up that game with a lot of fun and excitement for his friend Floyd. And then moving on to the Magic, they went to go visit the Clippers, but lost 96-105. Aaron Gordon had 28 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists. And JJ Redick actually was the top performer for the Clippers last night with 22 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists. And if you've been waiting for the return of Blake Griffin, it has been mentioned by Doc Rivers that he's doing very well and is expected to return soon. So the Clippers, I know, are looking forward to that and seeing Blake get back in the mix and what he's going to be able to contribute to the team. And then the Cavaliers, to end like this wrap up with the NBA games last night, the Cavaliers lost to the Trailblazers on the road, 86-102. LeBron had 20 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists, with CJ McCollum having 27 points for the Trailblazers, 4 rebounds, and adding 2 assists to the stat book last night. And so that was kind of like a lot of fun with the NBA. And we've been talking about that. We have a lot of basketball these next few weeks. And so it's fun because when we have a team like the Cavaliers who are actually 10-7 away, so they're used to winning on the road, but then the Trailblazers kept that home front advantage with their record at home being 11-8, so they don't really lose too often at home. So that was a lot of fun to see that game. And again, LeBron with the 20 points and 11 rebounds. And if you have been keeping up with the kind of distress that LeBron has been going through with the Cavaliers, it's just one of those things. I think this is just something that they need to iron out, quite frankly. He's getting a little bit irritated. They're saying that they need more practice. They need more time to mesh together. So hopefully, and it's funny because they're doing, despite this loss to the Trailblazers last evening, they are still doing very well. Their record currently is 28-10. So it's not like they're having a terrible season at all, but they're just not happy. And I guess that's what excellence is. I guess people will argue no matter how good that you are, you still want to be better. So, but with that, we are going to take it to a quick break. And when I come back, we need to discuss some college hoops. And so keep it locked here. You're listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. I will be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Pauline, and I just wanted to give a quick recap before moving on to the college side of basketball, and we have a lot to discuss over there as well. But I wanted to give a quick update on some key players that have been, I guess you could say, missing in action. So we have been discussing earlier this week, the news and talk has been Derrick Rose. And as we all know, he was missing from the game on Monday without a word. There was no communication between him and any of his teammates, none of the coaching staff or the office staff there in New York. He was just gone for a family emergency in Chicago. There wasn't a reason that he has given besides stating that it was due to a family emergency, which to me, in my personal opinion, he has every right to just keep it at that and not have to divulge any more as far as to the public and us fans as to why he was gone. He said it was a family emergency. Okay, straight, done deal. However, with everything that we do, and unfortunately, because basketball is a business, and even though he felt the need to miss a game abruptly without having a chance to send a word as to why beforehand and miss that game to go attend family matters, because it is a business, there are consequences. And it doesn't help that they lost that game, and it doesn't help that his game back they lost that game as well. It just when you do something wrong, if you're able to make it up, that usually helps a little bit. Or if you're an employee, a worker, and you make a mistake, but then you follow up with good work for the next couple of weeks or the next time you're supposed to present, then it kind of helps smooth things over. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't help that the Knicks have been in this rut as well. And so he was fined $200,000 for missing the game. And the way that the Knicks have decided to come up with this fine is, okay, so he was fined roughly $200,000 for missing Monday's loss to the Pelicans, and there was no notification. So basically the Knicks followed the protocol for when a player is suspended for a game. So it's basically 1/100th of his $2 million wage. So roughly $200,000 is what he was fined, and that is how they came up with that fine for Rose being missing from that game. So they treated it as him being suspended for the game. And so it is going to, and Rose has apologized, saying that it's not going to happen again and all of that, which, you're supposed to say. But me personally, like I said again, if you have family matters to attend to, and I know that you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to just not show up to work. You're supposed to notify someone. You could have shot a text to someone, all of that. But we don't know what kind of family emergency he was dealing with and why he had to leave so abruptly and without a word. But then I guess because it's Derrick Rose and he kind of has that bad boy rep type thing going on that we're just prejudging. And so it could possibly, but the thing is that $200,000 fine that he's been hit with from the New York Knicks might not be the end to his worries as far as money is concerned and contract. So he does believe that he deserves a max contract, which, you can argue yes or no. But the thing is this going to hurt him later on as summer approaches us? Because is this something that you want to deal with when having to decide whether or not you're going to sign a guy who is not a bad player? He's a great player. He's a great athlete, but how much of the extraness, the baggage that comes with him, injury liability, as well as, not showing up to work, communication, attitude, whatever you may say, what have you. How much is that worth as well? So is that going to later on come bite him as far as negotiating contract deals? So we'll see. We're going to keep an update on that as, when we discuss contracts and things like that as summer comes up. But then also another update that I have for you guys, we briefly touched on it in the first segment, is Blake Griffin. So Doc Rivers, Coach Doc, has said that he is set to make a return, hopefully by as soon as as early as the end of January. So we're January 12th right now. So midway through, about the halfway point of the month. So perhaps another few weeks before we see the return of Blake. But we do know, we as far as now, we don't know. And I quote Doc Rivers, we're not sure if he is ahead of schedule, on schedule, but all things are a go for him. And Doc did say that Blake told him that he feels great right now and that he feels really good. He did have to go a routine arthroscopic procedure to remove, it says, loose bodies from his right knee on December 20th. So he has missed 13 consecutive games as of yet. So the return of him, now this is a guy who is averaging 21 points before his injury. So he's been averaging 21 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 assists. So this is a guy that does contribute, and it is hard missing out. The Clippers missing him. We do know that they just recently gained back Chris Paul, who sat out 7 games over the last 2 weeks due to a strained left hamstring. And Doc is pretty good about letting his players heal, especially right now during the regular season. And because, he's very apprehensive about, moving too quickly after a procedure, after a surgery, after an injury, and having his guys thrown back into the mix too early in regular season play, because he likes his guys to be healthy during the postseason. So we're going to keep an eye on Blake when he returns, hopefully as soon as the end of January, if not early February. So hopefully he's going to have a great comeback when he is ready and set to play. So that is going to take us to our last break. And when we come back, we're going to wrap up this NBA talk so that we can discuss college hoops. So you are listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. I will be right back.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back. We are getting ready to wrap up this episode of the podcast. But before we do so, of course, we have to discuss college basketball. So here's a recap of the games from last night. Butler took on number 8 Creighton, but lost to them 64-75. Avery Woodson had 14 points, 5 rebounds, and 1 block. Maurice Watson Jr. had 21 points, 4 rebounds, and 7 assists. So that was actually great and matched the best start in the program with that. And then number 11 North Carolina went to go visit Wake Forest, defeating them 93-87. Kennedy Meeks had 18 points, 11 rebounds, and 1 assist, with Bryant Crawford of Wake Forest adding to the mix, 22 points, 3 rebounds, and 4 assists. Pittsburgh went to go visit number 14 Louisville, fell to them, but just by 5 points. So Pittsburgh had 80, Louisville with 85. Quentin Snyder of Louisville had 22 points, 3 rebounds, and 5 assists. But despite the loss that Pittsburgh suffered, Jamel Artis had 43 points, 3 rebounds and 2 assists for Pittsburgh. Minnesota took on Michigan State last night, losing to them. Okay, so Minnesota is 24, ranked 24, lost to Michigan State 47-65, and Minnesota only had 17 points the first half. 17 points. That's it. And Michigan State, they had 39 points that first half. So just right there, if you're starting off, if you're going into the locker room at halftime and you only have 17 points, you got to kick it into high gear, because either you got to kick it into high gear because now we have to get to even. Okay, so we have to best Michigan State now. We have to come out hard. But then Minnesota did outscore Michigan State in the second half. Minnesota put up 30 points, but Michigan State only had to do 26, and they still beat them 47-65. So that was that game. So if you're a Michigan State fan, then you guys were pretty happy about that, defeating Minnesota last night. And then I wanted to go on to the Wooden Award Midseason Top 25, because this is something that you can kind of follow throughout the season. And there's no really, it's not too late, even though it is midseason and they have announced their top 25 players. Anything can happen, and it does change, and it really does depend on how good you do throughout this season. And you can be anticipated to do well, but if you're just not having that great of a season, and you can lose your ranks amongst the potential Wooden Award recipients. And so that's kind of what is happening. So they did just release this list yesterday, so it's this is up to date right now, and there are a few new faces. The only person who was on the list as a top 25er from last season as well is Maryland's junior guard, Melo Trimble. So he is kind of in familiar territory right now as we move on now as the top 25 have been listed. And so there are 4 guys who have joined the list on the top 25 who were not a part of the original preseason top 50. So that's what I'm saying, when this is something that you can work towards, and that just because you weren't part of that top 50 or maybe even this top 25, you still have a chance. So those 4 guys are Baylor's Jonathan Motley, Butler's Keelan Martin, UCLA's TJ Leaf, and Duke's Luke Kennard. So these are 4 guys that were not even considered to be part of the mix preseason wise. But as the weeks have gone on, now that we're at that mid-season point, they've actually made the top 25. So I think that that's awesome. I think it's pretty cool. I think that it is definitely a testament to the fact that don't let these people tell you no, and that you have all season to shine. And that just because you weren't listed in the top 50 doesn't mean that you can't beat some of those guys out for a top 25 slot. And then Duke had actually 3 players on the preseason list. Our guy, Grayson Allen, that we've been discussing most recently this past week, Harry Giles, and Jason Tatum. But they did not make the mid-season list. So Giles and Tatum, if you've been following Duke and their program, they are out. They've been missing some games due to injuries. And then Grayson Allen, he's been a little bit different. He hasn't been living up to the expectations that were set for him at the beginning of the season. That's the other thing about being on the preseason top 50. That's a lot of pressure. You have a lot of expectations that you need to fulfill in order to still be considered for top 25. Just because you've hit that top 50 mark or even the top 25, you can't hit cruise control. It's every week, every game in and game out. You have to act like you are the best college basketball player of the season. And then there are some schools, there are 5 schools that have 2 candidates represented here on this midseason list. We have North Carolina with Joel Berry II and Justin Jackson. UCLA has, no surprise here, Lonzo Ball, as well as the newcomer in TJ Leaf. Kentucky has Malik Monk, De'Aaron Fox. Kansas is adding their 2 players, Frank Mason III, as well as Josh Jackson, and Wisconsin with Ethan Happ and Nigel Hayes. I like Nigel Hayes. And then 7 freshmen are on the list, which is awesome. And that's what I'm talking about. And this is when I follow the John Wooden list. And this is what I love because, again, when I just said, I'm repeating myself a little bit, but again, just because you made that top 50 doesn't mean you can go into cruise control. Just because you made the top 25, no, you still can't be cruise control. And just because you're one of the young guys doesn't mean that you cannot be. 7 seniors were also listed. We have Iowa's Monte Morris, Creighton's Morris Watson Jr., who, just last night had a great game as well for his squad, and Clemson's Jaron Blossom Game. And I love Jaron Blossom Game. And if you've been listening to the podcast, you know that I gave you guys my reasoning and my love for Jaron Blossom Game being a senior and sticking out for the 4 years. I love it. I know that a lot of people argue, with the one and done scenario or the 2 years and out. I am all about staying for the 4 years and enjoying your college career, doing well in your college career, and being a part of the top 25, such as Jaron Blossom Game. And so there, let's see, the ACC had, it says here, they led in the preseason with 12 players, but now they are down to 5 players. The Pac-12 has 5 representatives here. Big 10 and Big 12 have 4 respectively, so 4 apiece. And then, like I said, so the top 20 will be released in a few weeks in February, with the final ballot being produced in March. So it's not too late. It's getting close. And if you haven't been kind of, you need to ball out now if you're trying to make this top 20 list and either stay on the list, or if you're one of those guys looking at the top 25 saying, I'm better than this guy, I could take him, he ain't got nothing on me, then it is time for you to show us what you got, because you only got a couple more weeks for that top 20 list, and then the results will be finally announced in April. So we have quite a ways as far as until we know who will be the recipient of the award, but the top 20, which is an honor in itself as well, will be announced in a few weeks in February. So that's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. I am Pauline. You can listen to this episode again, any previous and future episodes on our network website, as well as, like I said, we have a family of podcasts on our network website. If you enjoy football, if you enjoy MMA, I also host a health and wellness podcast. So there's a variety of things available to you. That's gsmcpodcast.com. And if you're listening to us on iTunes, you can find us iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, Stitcher. So whatever it is that you're listening to us on, you can find the other amazing episodes and podcasts that we host on the network on your favorite platform there. So keep it locked in. I will talk to you guys. Actually, I'm not in tomorrow. You guys will have our guy Ben, but keep it locked here as we discuss hoops all day, every day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.